Surprise! The Vikings are next in my summer deep dive series. I did this interview with Arif Friday night. This video's dropping Monday night, and then the Vikings deep dive is going to drop tomorrow on Tuesday. And it went a little bit longer than my normal deep dive interviews, and it was a good thing. I mean, this is easily one of my favorite interviews every year, getting a chance to talk to Arif, who's now come on 3 years in a row. And I'm excited to share this with you guys. Get this out now. The Vikings deep dive will be up within the next 24 hours. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But in the meantime, I just want you to enjoy this interview. Everybody make sure you follow Arif at Arif Hasan NFL. Definitely one of the best NFL Twitter follows you can find out there. And yeah, let's roll the interview. Thank you for watching. And now I am thrilled to welcome into the deep dive a very special guest, the third year in a row, correct, Arif? Is this?
I think this is year 3. Yeah.
Arif Hasan of Pro Football Network, Vikings expert. And yeah, how's it going, buddy? Thanks for coming on. We're happy to have you.
It's going really well, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the Vikes are in transition. Hopes are lingering, I suppose.
Yeah, weird to say that about like a 13-win playoff team, but you're not wrong.
I know. Yeah, but keeping some hope alive is this quarterback series on Netflix, and Kirk being kind of the spotlight with Mahomes. Did you get a chance to watch the Netflix series? And
no, I did. I guess I didn't watch like the final 8 minutes of the final episode. I don't think there was any Kirk content in that. But no, I did watch it. It's one of those things where like obviously it was highly managed. I think Pro Football Talk just published a story today where like they transcribed a Dan Patrick Show appearance where Kirk was like, "Oh yeah, I got final say on everything," which is like, yeah, obviously, and so it's PR, right? But that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. And I enjoyed watching it. I learned a couple of new things, like just like how bad that rib injury was, because I knew, covering the team, I knew that he had rib concerns following the Washington game after the Daron Payne hit. I didn't realize the extent to which it had hurt him. I did know that his like flak jacket kind of grew as we approached the playoffs. He was like getting a bigger and bigger torso, but I didn't realize it was like, yeah, he just like kept on re-injuring. And I guess he like re-injured it against Buffalo or something, just like a crazy amount of pain that he went through, probably more than he'd ever had in his career based off of the way that he was talking about it on the show. But yeah, very enjoyable. I thought it was like really well edited. I thought the production value was really high. I thought they did a really good job. But of course, you always have to take it with like a grain of salt, right? And so it was meant to make Kirk Cousins look good. It did do that. And they didn't talk about any of the stuff that people don't like about him. So, good for him.
Yeah, this is like bad podcasting on my end because I haven't watched it yet. I lost my mom's Netflix password, and ever since then, I haven't gotten a chance to watch it. But that's cool. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Many such cases, right?
Yeah, exactly. So as someone that knows this team so deeply rooted as you do, one thing that really fascinated me with the Vikings was the acquisition, I suppose, of Tyler Williams, who many people probably don't know who that is. He's the the director of player health for the Vikings, and they brought him over with O'Connell from the Rams. And before or when he was with the Rams the year before, they had an incredible run of health. They went and won the Super Bowl, just only a couple injuries really. And then he leaves the Rams. They fall apart. He shows up for the Vikings. And the Vikings have one of the best runs of health in the league. And it's such an underrated aspect in terms of can you do something proactive to make yourself a healthier team? And I'm just curious if you've noticed anything just being around that team so closely, like anything that they're doing that might be replicable for other teams around the league.
Yeah, no, I think that it is noticeable. I mean, first, we just have to get it out of the way. Like, a lot of this is just randomness, right? It doesn't matter, like, kind of who. But, I mean, I do think that, at the margins, you do gain some advantages with, like, a healthier approach and stuff like that. And I think, there's a reason that they brought Tyler Williams in. And the changes that I've noticed have been pretty small. You would think that from, like, a Zimmer-run team to an O'Connell-run team that the changes in terms of taking care of player health would be pretty dramatic. But no, I mean, Zimmer actually did a pretty decent job. I'm not going to say like a wonderful job, but a pretty decent job of doing like player load management for all of his bluster about like, building tough football players.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't grind them into the ground or anything like that. What was interesting is that we asked Adam Thielen about this last year at camp, and he, he said that there's still a mixture of like there was his phrase was a mixture of old school mentality with the sports science stuff. He said, which I don't know like what he means by this, because I assume that he didn't like take the time to dive into sports science literature. Like, why would he? But like, he's like, I don't think I would ever do the full sports science approach. It's not for me. I like this mixture where some days it's full go and some days you get rest. And it's like, what if that is the full? What if that is what it is? But they were, I think, more assertive about making sure that players had rest days. They had half days, which is not something I saw a ton with Zimmer, or like 3/4 speed days happened a little bit more often.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty intentional about scheduling, when the intense days were versus the non-intense days. And then, so they would build a model essentially for kind of what the general practice over the course of the week, how practice should ramp up and draw down in intensity to minimize injury risk. But then also they would say, hey, we note that Jesse Davis because Jesse Davis was with the Vikings before they traded him to the Steelers. We noticed that Jesse Davis has this like particular injury concern. So
yeah,
we're gonna change the model a little bit for him and minimize his injury risk. And so they did that for a couple of players, and so you kind of noticed it in the way that it played out. I think the nutrition stuff is fairly maxed out across the NFL. I think that kind of after the Chip Kelly smoothie stuff, every team's just kind of on the same page, when it comes to nutrition.
Smoothies for everybody.
Yeah, smoothies for everybody, right? I guess I did notice, this is like one of those things that they're not trying to hide from you, but also you're not supposed to see.
Mm-hmm.
I did notice that there's like position-specific smoothies in the Vikings. I don't know what that's about. But like I'm sure the formulations aren't all that different, but it's just like the offensive linemen, they need a little bit more protein or something. I don't know, but they do have that. The Vikings are very aggressive about the sleep science stuff. Most teams are now, but yeah, I mean they're always trying to find edges and advantages, and they're pretty proactive about it. But I don't know that the difference was huge compared to last year or the year before. It was just notable.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. How much of an emphasis, teams are always trying to look at trends and models, and we'll see if, they go the Vikings way there. But let's look a little bit more at training camp now. And you've been going, I'm assuming, the last couple days.
I actually have not been able to head out directly to training camp. I've been able to grab some, let's call them highlights of what's been happening at training camp, and take a look at everything that's been happening. But circumstances have made it a little bit difficult for me to drive all the way out to Egan.
Gotcha.
But I've been able to make sure that I can be as on the ground as possible. Yeah.
I'm going to be going tomorrow, which as of this recording is 3 days ago. Yeah. But what are some of the position battles that you're most excited to see kind of play out here in camp?
Yeah, I mean, on offense, basically everything for the starters is set, so there's not really much in terms of position battles for starters. But I'm just the kind of guy that loves the bottom of the receiver depth chart. I love tracking it, seeing which players are. It's just like I figured I just like watching the receiver position a lot more, and so. I'm kind of curious about, they've got like 4 undrafted, well, I guess 3 now that Malik Knowles has been put on the injured reserve list. They've got a couple of undrafted free agents, some undrafted free agents from previous years, but like, Garrett Mogg, they've got Garrett Mogg is like the 6'3" UND guy. They grabbed Cephas Johnson III, who's a former quarterback, turned athlete, turned receiver. Blake Prohl, who's been here for like 3 years, consistently injured. Now he's finally on the field, so we'll see kind of what he can do. Obviously related to like, Ricky Prohl. And then you've got Jalen Reagor, Jalen Naylor, players that are much more likely to make it than the ones I just listed off.
Yeah.
Tristan Jackson, who's made some plays. There's another undrafted free agent that's been Thayer Thomas has been making a lot of plays, so he's kind of fun. So those kind of guys I like to watch a lot. But in terms of like impact, it's going to be on the defense, those position battles that matter. At cornerback, we're trying to figure out kind of who the third starter is going to be. It could be either a nickel, in which case it would probably be the rookie, Mekhi Blackman. Or it could be an outside guy, and they'll push Byron Murphy into the slot in three corner sets. in which case it'd be probably Joanne Williams on the outside or Andrew Booth Jr. But the thing is, I mean, Joanne Williams is just ahead of Andrew Booth on the depth chart right now, which I find pretty fascinating. Second round pick, fell to the second round primarily because of injury, was supposed to be, if healthy, a first round guy, and so you'd think he's healthy right now. What's stopping him from getting the starting job? So that one's kind of a fascinating one. And then at safety, Cameron Bynum is almost certainly going to start next to Harrison Smith, but that's not 100%. And I'm actually really interested in what's going to happen because it seems like the Vikings are going to do a lot of dime defense type stuff. What's going to happen with the third safety when that guy gets on the field? Right now, it looks like Josh Metellus, which leaves first-round pick from last year, Lewis Seen, potentially, out in the cold. We'll see, if he does anything. And then they drafted the guy Jay Ward in the 5th round. He's also super versatile. You'd think they'll probably find a spot for him, maybe, or maybe he's just going to play the Josh Metellus role. Maybe they keep 5 safeties on the roster. I don't know, but dime is not necessarily a starting position, but they're going to see the field a lot. So if Josh Metellus ends up doing that, that makes Lewis Seen the 4th, maybe even 5th, but probably 4th safety on the depth chart, which is fascinating.
Yeah, that will definitely be something to keep an eye on. Like, that's going to be very disappointing for Vikings fans, obviously. It means the first round pick from last year and the second round, or the first second round pick from last year don't play out. And it's not like Ed Ingram's lighting the world on fire, the other second round pick. So it's tough. Yeah, and that was a draft that was also criticized for they're trading down for worse players.
Yeah.
So I mean, that could potentially be a rough start for the new regime. I definitely keep an eye on that. Okay, and then talking about the draft, I was really surprised personally that they let Will Levis pass them. I felt like he fell there to 23, and they're a team that they're gonna have a hard time finding a prospect that is even in kind of consensus first round territory. I know he had his issues and not everybody loved him, and maybe they just were that low on him. But to me, it's like that was their out on the Kirk Cousins thing. And I'm curious, what was your kind of reaction?
I was surprised. Yeah. I figured if they were all that into Will Levis, they probably would have tried to trade up at least a little bit to go get him, and the fact that they stayed put. I don't know if it was demonstrative, but by the time that pick rolled around, I guess I wasn't shocked entirely when it wasn't him. But overall, if you'd asked me, hey, if Will Levis falls to the Vikings, do you think they would draft him? I'd say probably, So I was a little bit surprised, but it's one of those things where if they select him, I'm super behind it. If they don't select him and then he falls out of the first round, then I'm also super behind it because I think that that's a signal that the rest of the league is sending too about, the prospects of this guy. I do think that how much are you willing to reach for the most important position in the NFL? That's a genuine question, because if you've got a guy graded as a second round quarterback, you might end up with Andy Dalton, Colin Kaepernick, Jimmy Garoppolo. You might end up with a very good quarterback, a very serviceable quarterback in the second round, which is just an insane edge to have in football. Or, not. Right, you might not get Jalen Hurts, right, and so you might get Kellen Mond, right, and so you don't know kind of how much you're willing to sacrifice, whether or not you're willing to sacrifice Jordan Addison for that dart throw, I guess, because the quality drops off really quickly at quarterback.
Yeah.
Players tend to fall for a reason. His experience in pro style systems just isn't enough in the modern NFL to kind of sell him over his other flaws potentially, and so. I don't know. I'm a big QB guy. I think that you probably should take quarterbacks a little bit more often. I know you follow Green Bay, and so that that's kind of a guiding philosophy for that team. But I'm a little bit disappointed because I do think that kind of dart throw is worth it. But I guess I'm not shocked. The Kirk Cousins out thing is the thing that kind of weighs on your mind.
Right. Yeah. So. Now it's well, geez, how long is Kirk going to be around here? Is this going to be another 3 or 4 years of Kirk Cousins into his late 30s? And it's just, the word purgatory comes to mind there.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. We kind of saw that last year a little bit too, where teams just didn't want to pull the trigger on these quarterbacks and start that clock almost. I guess maybe it just comes down to you have to really believe that that's the guy. And I guess they just didn't believe that with Levis, but I mean, man, just kind of the wheels are turning here. Between the first couple picks we already talked about from last year's draft, if Levis becomes good, you could start to look back at this front office and be is this the right? Are we making the right decisions and the right calls here? It's we don't know our answers yet, but it could go that way pretty quick.
No, for sure, especially because people will talk occasionally about like, oh, the Vikings let Aaron Rodgers slip through them in 2005, and it's like, well, they had like an all-pro quarterback. Like he wasn't. I mean, I shouldn't say all-pro. I think that was Manning in 2004, but I mean, he was like almost a co-MVP, right? Like, they had a phenomenal quarterback. It made sense not to draft Rodgers then, but in this case, if Will Levis turns out to be good, like you got no excuse, right? Like if Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. He's not going to get substantially better unless like something kind of miraculous happens. And there's no time left on his contract. This is the last year of his contract, and so there's already kind of a runway that you're working with. You're going to have to take on, I think it's a $28 million cap hit next year because of the way the voids work. And so the best way to mitigate against that is either to extend the guy, which doesn't sound like lovely to me, or get a rookie quarterback. And so now you're paying the 28 plus like 5 or whatever the rookie quarterback is, right? And that's a quarterback salary. You're good. And so that like not attempting a way out of that is fascinating. And obviously, as we track Levis and some of the other quarterbacks, it'll be kind of I mean, there was a rumor that the Vikings wanted to trade up, even all the way up to 3, which I wouldn't have regarded them as having enough ammo to do that. So probably some players, but and also like future picks and stuff like that. If the quarterback they wanted was there and the team, I think it was the Texans, I think it was willing to do that, which like neither of those things occurred. I think they were like, yeah, if Bryce Young falls, and it's like, yeah, if I guess, right? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, geez. For those that don't follow Arif puts together one of my favorite things during draft season, the consensus draft board. And do you know off the top of your head where Levis was on that bad boy?
He was I have it like in front of me because I knew you wanted to ask about it. He was like 100% a first rounder. Let's see if I can just pull it up real quick.
You don't have all 300 players memorized in order?
Well, there's three sets of rankings to work with too. So he was 25th overall, and then he was 19th by what I call the forecaster board, and that's just imagine like kind of big media, big draft names. Those are the guys that have connections to scouts. They tend to do a pretty good job of predicting how the draft is going to fall. So people like your Dan Bruglers, your Mel Kipers, etc. Sure. So he was even higher on those boards that have connections to NFL teams. And then he was 22nd on the board that's constructed mostly of people whose only opportunity to great players comes from directly watching film and kind of absorbing the kind of public information that's available to them about those players. And so, obviously those two don't average out to 25. That's just kind of what happens when you do rankings. And so he's like 25th overall for sure, first rounder, obviously out of the 4 quarterbacks, the 4th, right? But, I think anybody, if at any point he'd been drafted in the first round, everybody could have been like, yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
And so, having him drop out was pretty, I mean, it happens every year, some like surefire first rounder, and this is not even a surefire, but like a first rounder just drops out. Happens to Georgia defenders a lot, apparently. And people are like, oh, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So the defensive side of the ball is fascinating because they lose like 4 key pieces, and they were horrible last year. But they were 27th in defensive DVOA last year, and that's obviously not going to cut it long term. Right. Somehow it was good enough for 13 wins last year, but we don't need to talk about that.
Hey man, when you got the horseshoe, you don't question
it. Do you think they'll be better than 27th this year, despite all the losses? Just is the Brian Flores factor enough to overcome those losses?
I think so. Individual personnel on defense don't tend to drive, statistically, historically anyway, outcomes that much. Obviously, aggregate, player talent, means a lot. Like the 49ers lost their defensive coordinator. I don't expect them to be bad at defense, right? Aggregate talent does matter, but one of the things that the people over at Pro Football Focus, some of the people now at Samara Sports, like Eric Eager, have found is that one of the reasons that defense is so volatile from year to year is because really good defenses have their defensive coordinators hired away to become head coaches. Even though that's happening less and less often, it's one of the reasons that we do a difficult job predicting defenses, which tells us that defensive coordinators seem to matter a lot, which is one of the reasons the Vikings were one of the few teams to have a consistently good defense from 2016 to 2019. It's just that kind of stuff doesn't happen all that often. It's because their head coach was a defensive coordinator. So it does matter a lot. And then also Ed Donatel was like a tremendously bad defensive coordinator. Like just he was so bad that like halfway through the year, I was asking compressors like, is he gone? Is this guy done?
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously, Kevin O'Connell's like, we're not going to talk about that. But like Kevin O'Connell had to intervene and scout the defense from an offense's point of view with Ed Donatel and was like, you got to change things up. And you take a look at the statistics from last year, and you take a look at which defenses were the least variable from snap to snap. So how often do they run the same coverage from snap to snap? How often do they blitz from snap to snap? How much is their player motion switching positions from snap to snap? And by far, a huge margin, the Vikings were the most predictable defense by far. It's not even close, like in terms of the amount of cover 2, cover 4 that they ran, and just the variability that you get from snap. It was brutally bad. And so you could not watch the previous week's film and just kind of have the general knowledge of how the Vikings defense ran, go into a game and be 70% right on your guesses on what they would do. That's abysmal. I don't know how else to put it. And Brian Flores is obviously, we know the characteristics of his defense. It's very blitz heavy. It's very cover 0, cover 1. It's a different style of defense. But the thing that matters the most is that it tends to be unpredictable. Like, yeah, he's going to blitz, but you don't know necessarily from where or who's going to blitz. You don't know, what the cover 0 is going to look like, what that leverage is going to be from down to down. Like, that's one of the things that is really troublesome is that, the Vikings ran cover 2 all the time, but they also ran the same cover 2 all the time, which is just crazy. And so, you would change what your defender technique was in the Brian Flores system and stuff like that. And he tends to adapt the defenses to the skill sets of the players he has because, he got taught by Bill Belichick on how to run a defense. And the Belichick head coaching degree is not that great, but they do know how to run defenses. They're pretty good at defense. And so I do expect that defense to shift pretty dramatically as a result of what Flores can provide. I mean, you take a look at that first year with Miami, that team was bereft of defensive talent, and they ranked like 16th in EPA.
Yeah.
So, like, that's crazy to me. So, I expect the defense to be a lot better. It is, you're right, it's less talented. So that's going to matter a lot. But 27th in DVOA is...
Yeah.
You're more likely to go up and down.
I can like see the same fire coming out of your eyes is the same thing I felt with Joe Barry with the Packers. It's like, it's the same problem. I think Donatel's like slightly even worse, but like, you give Ed Donatel the Packers defense, which is incredibly talented. And it's just like, how is this not a dominant?
Whenever I write a Packers preview or something like that for the year, I always come up with the same sentence. It's like, this defense might be the biggest difference between talent and results in the NFL. It's such a talented defense.
For like 10 straight years. Like, like, let's invest everything, salary cap, draft picks, let's invest it all in the defense, but spend no time asking if we have the right coordinator to run the show. So it's just like... I know exactly how Vikings fans felt last year, and then they let him go, and I'm like, oh, here we are.
Yeah, that's normally that's how the process works. Is when the defensive coordinator is not good, you kind of let go of him. But it's like a critical part.
Or like not good in 3 different stops throughout a decade and a half. In Joe Barry's case. Yeah. So congrats, by the way.
It's definitely going to make the games more watchable. I mean, I guess the Vikings were uniquely watchable, but it's going to make it more fun to kind of...
Watchable for me, maybe. The other area I felt like they really were kind of, beating their head into a wall was the run game at times. What did you see schematically and some of the things you'd like to see them maybe do to mix things up and improve there last year from last year?
I think that, they ran, the wide zone stuff that McVay and Shanahan are pretty well known for. The Vikings obviously have run outside zone, and it's a little bit different the way McVay does it than the way that Kubiak does it. They've been doing that for a long time, and then in 2021 they mixed it up a lot. They were much more willing to play kind of the gap power schemes that Kyle Shanahan did. He mixes it up a lot. And so it was kind of interesting. Then they go back to being a pretty wide zone dominant team, but we did see some kind of diversity. So there was a little bit more diversity in running styles than you saw with the Rams last year. And so there's a little bit of a change there, but that's kind of dominantly who they are. The interior offensive line has like some exciting moments as run blockers. Ezra Cleveland and Garrett Bradbury are both better run blockers than they are pass protectors. But it was largely, a pretty significant weakness, and so that played a pretty big role. The Vikings were pretty committed to 11 personnel, and so they were blocking with just 6 guys for Dalvin Cook, and for half the year it wasn't T.J. Hawkinson, right? He was traded at the trade deadline. It was like Irv Smith or just whoever, like Ben Ellefson,
right?
Who, like just retired. So that was an issue too. Dalvin Cook was an issue. I think that there's a lot has been made about the talent drop off from Dalvin Cook to Alexander Madison, and like in a general sense, that's like true. But from a comparing 2022 to 2023 sense, like maybe not that true. Like there is one. It's not enormous based off of what Cook was able to do last year. So, and he was just kind of. The thing is, Cook in 2022 in training camp was the fastest I'd seen him since like I think his rookie or second year. I mean, he looked remarkably fast in camp, and then on the field, he had slowed down. There was like a little bit less burst coming out of his cuts, and it didn't seem like he was confident in his choice. He was like hesitating a little bit. For him, I think for most backs, it would look a little bit more decisive, but like that was an issue. And one thing about Madison, I mean, he's not like a wonderful running back or anything like that, and I'd love to be proven wrong about that. But he is decisive. Like that, he makes a decision, and he goes, and his vision's all right that he can commit to that kind of thing. Like Kene Nwangwu, who's probably going to be their second back, is not decisive despite being the fastest guy. Well, second fastest after Kalen Barnes, but like an insanely fast human, right? Is not decisive, and so it just feels like it doesn't go anywhere. Madison is that, and so. Yeah. That's probably going to be kind of one of the. You're probably not going to get the 40-yard runs that we're used to seeing with Dalvin Cook. You're probably not going to get as many negative runs, which I think from a analytics perspective, that's more useful, avoiding negatives rather than generating positives. Like you have to be Adrian Peterson good for your feast and famine style to be like useful.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so this is something I've been doing with all my guests, and I've been really enjoying it. It's like a superlatives draft challenge, and we're just kind of going down your typical superlatives, best rookie and all, team MVP and all that stuff. But the catch is, we go back and forth, snake draft style, and you only a player can only be used once. So there's a little strategy to it. So I will give you the first pick, and I regret doing this because our first superlative is a tough one. It is breakout offensive player, and it's tough because it's mostly existing talent.
Yeah. Do I talk through? I'll talk through this. Obviously, so can't pick a rookie because how do you break out of zero, right? KJ Osborne, I broke out 2 years ago. I don't know that there can be any meaningful statistical improvement that you would call a breakout, so I'm going to avoid him. The guy I've been writing about that's been doing really well in camp. So I want to talk about Alexander Madison. That's boring. Maybe you can pick him. Go ahead. That's an easy one, right? And I don't trust Kene Nwangwu's eyes. And I just don't know how much run Ty Chandler's going to get. So I'm going to talk about this receiver, Jalen Naylor, who has been lighting up camp. He has been injured the past 2 days. We haven't seen him on the field. We don't know why yet, and so we don't know if it's significant or not. So hopefully this doesn't age poorly or anything like that. But he did really well in minicamp and OTAs. The way that the coaches have been talking about him seems very similar to the way that they talked about KJ Osborne 2 years ago when he broke out. And so he could go from 33 snaps, I think, as a receiver last year to, having a significant number of snaps as a fourth receiver. He could be their deep threat. I think they see him as kind of like an Aldrick Robinson type, where it's like, yeah, he's a deep threat, but he's not going to be on the field all the time.
Sure.
And so you can stretch the field, help you out, and then you'll go back to the bench, and that's fine. And that can get you a nice 500-600 yards if you do it right. So that's going to be my pick.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good shout. I hadn't really thought about him, but I liked him kind of where he went as a prospect. Just the physical tools are there, the upside, and Michigan State not exactly the most prolific passing game. So you rip him out. Yeah. You rip him out of that and put him in one of the best passing offenses in the league, and the room for growth looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
So good pick there. Did not see that coming. I'm not gonna take Alexander Madison just because sounds like you call me because you called me. I'll take Christian Darrisaw, who I know kind of already did last year. But I think when he kind of missed time at the end of the year, he lost a little bit of that momentum in terms of like public perception as a top 5, one of the best tackles in the NFL. And I think another year fully healthy in a system that works great for him, he can really cement himself. I I get in it with Jets fans, and I think it's fine now because I'm a closet Jets fan now that Rodgers is there. But like Jets fans, like I am a Jets fan now, so I hope I'm wrong about this, I guess. But
Quick, were you a Jets fan for like the 10 games Favre was?
no, no, I was all in on Rodgers at that point, and I wasn't quite as obsessed with football back then as I am now. But that would have been short lived, I think, if I was. But where I was going with that is basically Darrisaw is going to break out to the point where Jets fans can no longer say that Elijah Vera Tucker is still better than him.
There it is. Yeah.
Because when I say that the Jets screwed up there, that they never needed to make that trade and they took the wrong player, Vera Tucker's a fine player. I like Vera Tucker, but Darrisaw to me is like, you got a franchise left tackle there. So he's going to break out to the point where Jets fans are going to finally shut up about
that's the measuring stick. I like it. So here's the thing: as we're talking, and you mentioned that we're recording this well before this goes live. I just published an article that basically said what you said about Christian Darrisaw, because Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator, said yesterday that he is elite and the league hasn't realized it yet. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote about it. I was like, is he? Let's talk about it. And I went through, he was second in PFF grade, I'm sure you know. And sixth in ESPN pass block, run block win rate. He was astounding. And the exact thing you said is what I said, is that you because offensive linemen are so difficult to keep up hype for, when you lose a little bit of momentum in the public eye, when you're injured in a concussion in the middle of the season, you're just going to lose out to, an Andrew Thomas, who is also an elite Pro Bowl. I don't want to take anything away from him. He's phenomenal. He could be better than Darrisaw. He ranked, I think, just like right below. Mm-hmm. So it's like, meaningless distinctions between the two. But Thomas took the crown entirely, right? It wasn't even a question about, who is succeeding among the young left tackles, And so I wrote exactly what you said. So I'm on board. I just don't know if it's a breakout really. It's a public perception breakout, right, but it's not like a performance breakout.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I'll have to check that article out. Okay, breakout defensive player, and I get the first pick this time because we're snake drafting it.
Yeah.
And I should have started the first one, because I think I'm going to take someone that you're not going to take for this one. Maybe he's on your radar, but Kairos Tunga, the nose tackle.
That was going to be my pick if you took my number. So we have the same thought process here, but go ahead. They sniped him off the Bears practice squad, or they cut him or whatever. And I just think in a league where, teams want to, be lighter in the boxes up front, if you want to do that, you have to have that space eating nose. I think he can play that. I think he can play 3-tech. He's not a pass rusher or anything, but I think we're trending a little bit more towards the Kairos Tungas of the world starting to be a lot more valuable, just because of the way people want to play defense, and the league getting back to the run a little bit more. And a guy like that, who's, incredibly cheap, does his job, not going to get all the praise in the world, but I like to think that what they saw from him was enough for them to justify letting a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson go. So I'll take him. Yeah. So here's kind of the reason that he was my second choice here. And the reason I thought I was going to end up picking him is, the Vikings have him on the first team right now next to Harrison Phillips in their nickel sets. So they clearly think a lot of him. They drafted a 5th-round tackle that could have been there. They're not using him there yet. Maybe, as camp goes on, this changes. But right now he's starting ahead of Dean Lowry, who is, in base sets is on the first team. He's starting ahead of like Jonathan Bullard and all the guys that they brought in, which have better draft pedigrees, that they're paying more. You grabbing this guy. I think it was the Bears cut him, and then the Falcons put him on the practice squad. They signed him for the Falcons practice squad. Because I remember I said that they signed him off the Bears practice squad, and someone in like a YouTube comment section was like,
I'm sure,
idiot, that's not what happened. So, but yeah, I mean, he did really well. He had 2 really standout games last year. I wish I could remember specifically. to be like 2 huge games last year, and he was a little bit inconsistent in some of the other games, some really good moments, holding up well against double teams against some really strong offensive linemen. And like you said, the way that those defenses have been constructed now to lighten the box puts more on the shoulders of these defensive tackles up front. So you need to get a little bit bigger than we're used to seeing from the previous decade of football. So certainly that. But my pick, the one I thought you were going to pick, was Brian Asamoah.
See, I'm not a huge Asamoah guy. That's why.
So this is a signal thing for me, because I wasn't a huge Asamoah guy coming out of the draft. I thought, man, I don't like this pick. It's like, I think it's the second worst pick the Vikings made in the draft. I love Lewis Seen. I love Andrew Booth. And it's just the Ed Ingram pick is bad, and the Brian Asamoah pick is bad. And of course, Brian Asamoah is the one that's starting. But they cut Eric Kendricks, right? And they kept Jordan Hicks, right? It was just like, so they must think that Asamoah has something. Obviously, he's a very athletic player. That's kind of his thing. I thought his eyes were bad in college. I thought he just wasn't very disciplined, didn't know necessarily what he didn't keep to his keys, and he loved to shoot gaps. He was just like, if I'm seeing a hole, I'm going through it, whether or not that's kind of the right decision for the defense as a whole. And he did a little bit of that because he did have to play last year a little bit. He did a little bit of that. It turned out to be mostly okay. And, I'm not comparing these players one-to-one, but there are situations where players can mostly guess and be extremely valuable. And the extreme end of that is J.J. Watt. He just guessed most of the time. But he was J.J. Watt, right? It didn't matter. Yeah. Right? And so the fact that he didn't keep his run lane didn't matter because he was 3 yards into the backfield. Now, Asamoah's not going to do that. He's not J.J. Watt. I'm not predicting that. What I'm saying, though, is it might not be as bad as I thought it was. And the Vikings just, they won't stop singing his praises. So I think that there's probably something there. And so I'm going to go against my draft priors. And I'm going to go against even like the criticisms and he played better than I thought he would last year. I'm going to go against kind of the worst parts of his play from last year. And I'm just going to say, hey, maybe they saw something. Maybe they realized that Oklahoma just does not coach linebackers, which, I mean, you take a look at that recent history, maybe that's the case. Yeah. And they're just going to say, hey, we can coach this guy better. And maybe that's it. And maybe he was coachable in interviews and at pro days and stuff like that. So maybe that's what they're seeing. And so I'm just going to kind of trust their judgment here. They clearly don't put a lot of priority onto draft capital, at least on defense. I mean, Lewis Seen never started. So there might be something there. So that's my pick, and it's going against my personal judgment to kind of pick up on all these little small signals that the Vikings
cool. Yeah, I like it. Upsides there for sure. So the next superlative goes back to you, and this is the biggest wild card for the team.
So it's tough because I don't know what wild card means here.
Okay, let me clarify it. So this is like the biggest sort of X factor / make or break. Like this guy has a good year and things go well for the Vikings, or this guy has a bad year and that's a massive problem for the team.
Okay, and I'm going to exclude quarterback because that's a little bit too.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking for that guy where like he's on the spectrum in terms of like could be.
Yeah, there's a lot of volatility in the level of expected play. Man, if guards were more important, I think I'd pick Ed Ingram here, but it's just that I think it's too much. I'm going to go with Josh Oliver, actually. The Vikings are pretty high on what he can do as a pass catcher based off what he did in college. Obviously, they're tremendously high on his run blocking capability based on what he did in Baltimore.
And what they paid him.
And what they paid him, yeah. Just not a small amount of money.
Right.
Only a little bit more than Cole Kmet, though. Find that interesting.
Boy.
but Saquon Barkley's out here watching these tight ends.
Oh my God. It's just like it just doesn't compute. Does not compute. Yeah. But like obviously Jacksonville didn't work out for Oliver, but Baltimore did. But he was kind of buried in the depth chart because there's a guy named Mark Andrews there that you kind of want to give a lot of snaps to. And the Vikings clearly have redesigned the way that they're going to approach their offense based off of the fact that Josh Oliver was available and that they signed him. And so they're moving away from 11 personnel as their like super dominant approach. And moving into heavier boxes. They think that this will help them improve their play action.
Last year, Kirk Cousins was better in 12 personnel than he was in 11, which I think is the first year in his career that's been the case. And which, maybe that's a blip. Maybe they shouldn't chase that kind of data, but I don't know. But they want to improve the capacity for explosives in the run game, and I think they're on the side that blocking matters more than running back talent when it comes to generating rushing production, which is one reason they get Josh Oliver. But they really do think that he is a really gifted pass catcher, which anyone who followed that draft class would understand. Like the Vikings thought. So Wes Phillips said, hey, when we were rating him with the Rams, we thought we were going to have to teach this guy how to block. We didn't think that he could block. And he didn't say the second part, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like they didn't think that he could block, and he turns out to be a remarkable blocker. So he's clearly a big part of how they want to do things. TJ Hawkinson obviously is tight end 1, but Oliver's going to see a ton of snaps, and how those snaps go, I think, will determine a lot of how that offense goes. I mean, that defense is going to get better, and obviously some individual defenders will play a pretty big role on that. But the Vikings just do not make the playoffs if their offense is not finely tuned. And I think that's going to be a big part of tuning that offense.
I really like that answer because it could just add completely like a whole different sprinkle to the offense to be in 12 personnel more. And the receiving upside is also something I hadn't really thought of. So glad you picked him. I'll go with, I was kind of hoping one of the corners would have been gone by now so I could pick one of them. I'm going to just cheat it a little bit and be like, it's either Mekhi Blackmon or Andrew Booth, whoever walks out of camp, like as a starter there.
Okay. Yeah.
Or, Evans, like whichever of these, young corners ends up week 1, like in a position where they could be exposed. It's that guy. Like I just, in a man heavy defense that we're expecting, if you're trotting out there guys that are losing, 70% of their man-to-man snaps, I don't care if Brian Flores is the defense coordinator. Like that's going to be a huge problem. So I like that they're opening up competition. I think the upside is there for all these guys, but I think that's going to ultimately decide if this is a capable defense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was very clear that this competition is wide open. Like I said, they don't seem to care that much about draft investment because Caleb Evans is taking more cornerback 1 slots than anyone else. And then a guy that they picked up basically for free in Joanne Williams is ahead of Andrew Booth. So whoever wins will almost certainly have earned the job. And whether or not that matters, we'll find out week 1. But that's good. It's going to be a big part of kind of the way, it doesn't matter how many blitzes you send. If you're in single coverage, that's what matters.
Yep. All it takes is
so long as Christian Watson catches the pass.
Hey, now we're getting second half. We're getting second half Christian Watson next year, sir. Not first half Christian Watson. I guess you didn't get the memo on that, but
I heard that the first play of training camp he dropped the pass.
No, you did not. You did not hear that.
I 100% heard that.
All right, that was our guest interview with Arif. Everybody. God damn it. All right. Let's keep the show on the tracks here. Okay. Our next superlative is best draft pick not named Jordan Addison. And I'm up.
You're right. Yeah.
I'm gonna go.
I mean, I only have 2 picks here, so
I have 2 as well. I bet it's the same. I'll take Dwayne McBride.
Yeah. Okay.
Every guy I talked to, whether it was Connor Rogers, Trevor Sikkema, Mike Renner, we all loved everything we saw from Dwayne McBride.
He rules.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah. I don't get the whole, I mean, maybe something. I guess injuries, is that short answer?
No,
why?
It's not necessarily injuries. I don't want to get too much into details, but he should have been a better recruit. But he didn't nail the recruiting interviews. Let's go with that.
All right.
And so that's the reason he didn't end up at a big school, probably related to the reason he fell out of the 7th round. But as a player, he's phenomenal.
Yeah. Everything from the vision, the feet, at his size. The thing I always did to kind of describe his game is he just sets up bad angles somehow. He just has that craft. He's I've cleared to the second level. He just kind of like takes a side drift to set up that cut. And then if he can make that safety miss, he's gone. And it's just like, that is the instincts of the position that you just don't find all the time. So
purely as a runner. Obviously, we don't know about his receiving because they threw the ball to him like 8 times. But but purely as a runner, it does kind of remind me of Kareem Hunt at Toledo with the way he's. I mean, obviously bigger, but like the way that he sets up those like really awkward tackling angles. It's really difficult for people to find purchase. So like, I think we're on the same page there. But like,
another guy, Arian Foster, kind of running style.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. So like, he would have been. He was my first, choice for this one. The other one is I'm a position value guy, right? So obviously that running back is a 7th round pick, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But a quarterback, I'm going to pick Jaron Hall.
Okay.
I do like Jay Ward, but I take a look at all of the values that these players were slotted out in the consensus board, and I take a look at where they picked, and the Vikings were negative against value except for Jaron Hall and Dwayne McBride. Those are the only 2 picks that they made, and Jordan Addison, obviously. Those are the only 2 picks that they made outside of the first round that generated positive value against the consensus board. Now, that doesn't rule my opinions or anything like that, but I didn't think the Mekhi Blackman pick was all that great. I thought that Jaquelin Roy, his use value is kind of limited because he's more of a run stuffer, and I know that we just talked about how the league's going in that direction.
He was my other.
I like him. He's good, and you can play him at multiple spots along the defensive line. I just think that his upside is very limited, whereas I don't think that's the case for Jaron Hall. Now, I don't think he's going to start ever. I don't think he's ever going to take over for Kirk Cousins. And the Vikings have a very strong backup quarterback as far as backup quarterbacks go, Nick Mullins. And so it's not as if, he's going to be quarterback 2 coming out of this, but the amount of value that you can generate out of just having a good backup quarterback or anything is just tremendous. I did like what I saw at BYU. I think that he should have been picked a little bit higher. I'm not saying, he should have been a 3rd round pick or anything like that, but I liked basically his skill set and his processing time, which like I think you see these guys with like really high upside, and like Tyree Jackson took forever to make a decision. Zach Mettenberger took forever to make a decision, and at least Tyree Jackson was athletic. Zach Mettenberger just like, dude, you can't move, just throw the ball, and so like that's one of the reasons that you see Josh Allen's go high and Tyree Jackson's go low, is because of how long it takes to get the ball out of their hands, whether that's because of a release or because of how quickly it takes for them to make a decision. You can't really improve that much a quarterback's processing speed. And Jaron Hall makes decisions pretty quickly. And so, which, I was kind of surprised because I didn't really watch him until the Vikings had drafted him. And I don't tend to view Vikings draft picks with a positive bias. Like, I'm very critical of what they do. But, he's a guy I didn't think I would go in liking him, and I thought he was going to be like, it's just like Zach Wilson light. It's not he's going to run around. He's got this O-line that's like 30 years old. It's but, I thought that, he's a pretty good athlete, obviously. He's got a really good arm. His accuracy is not 100% there, but to me, decision-making matters a little bit more. And I don't know that he's always making the right decisions, but when he does make the wrong decisions, he makes them quickly. Yeah. And so as a backup that could, develop, I do like that pick a lot.
Yeah. You said he should have gone early. Are you implying that he should have gone ahead of Sean Clifford?
100%. Not even close.
Talk about being critical of your own team's draft picks. My God.
Do you think Sean Clifford could beat out Tim Boyle in a camp competition?
No, I don't think he can hold Tim Boyle's jockstrap. Tim Boyle looks like Tom Brady next to Sean Clifford. Hey, it was the one pick I didn't really like from them this year, so I'm like, I'll live with it if a 5th round pick is your biggest.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. All right, so I had 2 left. I think I'm going to throw out team MVP because it's Justin Jefferson, right? We don't need.
Not even close.
Yeah. But I did have one last one on here, and this is another one where there's probably only one good answer. I did write 2 down, and that's most improved position group.
Improved. I mean, if I were going to – I think there might be a 3rd answer here. Okay. But if I'm going to pick one – and we could talk about what the 3rd answer is once you select. but I'm just going to pick cornerback just because they're
Really?
100% turnover basically.
Okay.
I mean, basically 100% turnover. Obviously, Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth were there last year, but they were both injured and they didn't play very often. But I do think that Patrick Peterson played pretty well last year. I don't know that I think that Byron Murphy played worse than he did last year. Like Peterson, obviously Hall of Famer Byron Murphy probably never going to sniff it. That's not, it was
Right.
how Peterson played last year was very limited. Now, what he was asked to do, he did very well. He was not asked to do a whole heck of a lot, right? Like he just doesn't have the speed anymore. He's lost even the quickness a little bit. He's a very strong, very instinctive, whatever the word instinctive means in football, well studied.
Yeah.
He knows what he wants to do and he makes that decision really quickly and he's right.
Yeah.
But he's not following receivers down the field. Again, what if Christian Watson had caught it? Patrick Peterson's numbers would look a lot worse, right? But he's not following Watson down the field. He's not following Romeo Doubs.
I knew we should have actually ended this interview 10 minutes ago.
Just keep going. But yeah, so he was limited both by the fact that Ed Donatel was the coordinator, but also because he just needed safety help. And if you can design a defense that doesn't have that, Byron Murphy, I think, is a more versatile, more capable player that's going to help your defense more, even if he doesn't do the job that's asked of him as well, because it's a tougher job that'll be asked of him.
Yeah.
And then I think Caleb Evans, year 2, I'm just going to project him as starting. I think that that's going to be pretty significant. I did like what I saw out of him, the small sample that he played in. And he seems to be picking up on stuff like really, really quickly, which, I mean, he had to do when he transferred to Vandy and it worked out really well for him. And then I do think probably, I don't know if it's Jawan Williams or Mekhi Blackman. I think it's probably going to be Williams. Mekhi Blackman could blow away in a stiff breeze. So I don't know if I want that guy on the field a ton. But Jawan Williams is the opposite. He's 6'3", 215. He played all right in some games for the Patriots. The key is that he knows the defense really well, the Brian Flores experience. And given that defensive style, he kind of fits what they want to do. And I don't think they'll be an average unit. I think they'll be a below average unit, but I think that would be a pretty tremendous improvement over what they did last year. So that's my pick.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that was not one of the two that I had. Wide receivers, obvious. You add Jordan Addison in the mix. I think Thielen was a shell of himself last year. That one kind of speaks for itself, and that's the obvious one I figured we both would gravitate towards. The other one I had was actually the offensive line, just with health. And
I think that's the other one. Yeah.
Another year. I think continuity is so important. I mean, you're hoping Ed Ingram can be, I mean, if he's twice the player he was last year, he's a adequate replacement level player.
Maybe he gets up to that level, but if he's twice the player, maybe he's adequate. Yeah,
exactly.
But there's a lot of room for growth. That's the way to put it for the purposes of this category.
Yes, exactly. So that was the other one I had there to wrap up the superlatives.
Yeah. I stayed away from the offensive line just because I think that there's room for Bradbury to go back down to earth because he's basically had one good year. It was last year, and a lot of that might have to do with the head coach and the scheme and the offensive line coach and stuff like that. But I didn't like what I saw. I know that he graded well. I know that his numbers are pretty good from a variety. I didn't like what I saw. And so I just don't think that level of production will sustain itself. I think Ezra Cleveland's fine. I think he's a pretty decent guard, average, above average guard.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to improve substantially. He does have a pretty high ceiling in theory because of his athleticism. But so that's why I stay away from the offensive line, because the Garrett Bradbury thing just concerns me that it could counter any of the improvement that Ingram makes. And then obviously receiver, it just, it's just rookies, you just never know. Right. And so I was I'll just pick the one where, the veteran improvement, might mean something.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That's all we got. I guess I do want to get your gun to your head over under 8.5 on the season win total on the way out here.
I'll take the over, but a very soft, I'm picking 9.
Yeah.
I'm kind of over. I mean, we know the whole thing with close games and stuff and last year. And I did project a defensive improvement to hopefully something close to average, below average, right, from 27th. But, the offense is going to get better, but I just don't know that that's going to translate necessarily. So the offense gets slightly better, or the defense gets substantially better. You think that's going to mean more in terms of, but they were negative in point differential last year, like -4, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is a very thin negative point differential, but like you get up above that, you take a look at the schedule, and obviously the NFC North is weird, and so you don't know what to do with that. But you can see where all the losses pile up. Their tough teams are really tough. The rest of the schedule is kind of whatever. But I think I see them losing some gimmies, and then that's going to take them to 9. I mean, it's the Vikings. They just lose stupid games all the time.
Minnesota sports luck. I can't believe it. They won all those close games last year playing
in
Minnesota.
They banked it for 40 years to win all those games. They couldn't even manage a playoff win. And now the well is dry. And so they're going to have another 40 years of losing stupid games to bank up, hopefully a miracle run again.
Yeah.
In which they'll lose in the NFC Championship game.
Can't wait. Can't wait to see the pain on all my friends' faces.
I can't wait to see what it's like for you to follow a team without a Hall of Fame quarterback. What's that going to be like?
What do you mean? I'm a Jets fan now. I don't know what you're talking about.
I can't wait to see what it looks like when you follow a team that doesn't have the level of play you'd expect from a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Okay. For what it's worth, I do have the Vikings as the highest ranked team in the NFC North this year. So
not a Jared Goff guy.
I mean, he's Kirk Cousins. It's the same guy. Yeah. So thanks so much for coming on, Arif. This was an absolute blast as always.
It was a ton of fun. Yeah.
You mentioned some of your articles you got going up. Where can we find your work?
Yeah, so over at profootballnetwork.com, if you want to go directly to my author page, it's just /author/ASON. I'm writing about 2-3 articles a day whenever camp's open, so I've got a practice report every day, as well as 1 or 2 pieces that deserve a deeper dive, that stuck out. So like I mentioned, the Christian Darrisaw piece, wrote a Jalen Naylor piece. So you can find all of those over at profootballnetwork.com.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Hopefully I'll see you out at Vikings camp if situations permit, but take care, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll see you there. Peace out.